Hi everyone, this is Lean and welcome back to the Crafty Meraki YouTube channel. Today I am making a birthday card and therefore I'm using the Pretty Princess by My Favorite Things. I'm going to do some Noline coloring, so I'm stamping it out with ink on 3 Fadeout Noline coloring detail ink, and I'm doing this twice. It's not always necessary, but I just prefer having the right impression everywhere from my image, so doing it twice to be certain. And now before I'm going to color everything in with my Copic markers, I'm first adding the details using this Micron Fine Liner 005. I'm doing this because sometimes you can lose a bit of the faces when you start coloring with your Copic markers over these inks, so that's why I do it ahead of time. However, you also need to watch out that you're not smearing these black details while you're coloring. I experienced that later on with the unicorn and I tried several things to fix it, but in the end I just colored it again exactly the same way off camera. Now I'm coloring with my Copic markers, and as always I prefer going from darkest to lightest and then adding different layers until I'm happy with the blend. The paper that I'm using today is Transotype Perfect Coloring Paper, which is a paper that I really like as it gives me the opportunity to add lots of layers until I'm happy with the end result, without any bleeding. So I am doing the skin tone here for the girl, and the other one I am not going to show the skin tone of because it's exactly the same as this one. There are different ways of doing skin tones. I noticed that when I'm making a card, I prefer using one skin tone all over the card. Maybe that's just easier, less markers that I need to grab, but I differentiate between the colors that I'm using quite often. So I forgot here that tiny detail to put it in black, but I just fixed it. And now I'm onto the dress. So for this one I am doing a really warm yellow tone, and for my darkest color therefore I'm using yellow red. Now the rest is with yellow. These colors go really well together, so that was an easy decision for me. To give this dress a bit of texture, I decided to do some flicking. Now of course stopping ahead of time before passing the lines on the bottom of the dress, and then later on I will fill it in going upwards like this, and I just go back and forth. I keep adding layers until I'm happy, but I noticed that with this paper it allows me to add a lot of layers without bleeding, but also I find that I need at least 2 layers to get a nice blend and have all the colors present. So that's what I'm doing just until I'm happy, and then I can continue with the other parts. So today I am combining this adorable stamp set from My Favorite Things with the View from My Window Slimline die, and I just wanted to talk about it because so far I have used the Slimline dies for Slimline cards because that's easy, that's what they are made for originally. They fit perfectly, you don't need to add anything or cut anything apart. But the amazing design team members really inspired me. There were a few that during the release month as well as in this month used this View from My Window Slimline die on an A2 size, and that gave me this idea. So actually once you get to look at your Slimline dies also being able to make an A2 size card with it, well, endless possibilities I think. So yeah, I'm not done with playing with these Slimline dies because you can just use them on whatever card you want. I also like the fact that these Slimlines, like the View from My Window that I'm using today, also give you a really handy way of creating a shaker, and I just love it. I also love the details on the dies. Whenever there is stitch details, I'm just, yeah, it just makes me fall in love with each die that I see. It's something that is not easy to recreate without having a die. So I think it's wonderful and it adds so much more to your card. So going back to the image for now, I'm doing the hair, and there are different ways to color in hair. You can do some flicking, which is something that you really need to get used of. I'm still not there yet, but I try from time to time to do a bit of flicking. Now, in this case, for this stamp set, you can already see the waves. It's incorporated in the stamp, in the image itself. So I prefer, when I have these lines, to follow them with my markers and just create that blend that I would do normally, to have the texture that was already given in the image, but I'm not flicking. Also, with doing the Noline coloring, I would have lost these lines, and I like it. So I just followed them, made sure that I had a blend, and then I went over it at least twice. So now I can continue with the second one. The skin tone I'm not showing because, as I said in the beginning, it's the same color combination as for the other princess. But the dress, the hair, and then of course the unicorn I'm showing, because that's different. This dress I'm doing in a really dark, warm red, because I love this color combination. And by doing this, I create two princesses that have a really warm tone surrounding them. The clothes are just really warm, and I really like that. So I'm doing the shoes the same color. I don't want to distract too much. And then I'm just making sure that I'm going from darkest to lightest, and now onto my second layer. So that's how I do Copic coloring. Normally when I'm doing Noline coloring, I prefer choosing a simpler image, because this isn't really easy with also the hair and the waves in it, and then the tiny arms. It's a bit of a challenge, so I wouldn't recommend these images if you're new to Noline coloring. Then I would suggest take quite a substantial image without too much details. I try to pick and choose those images for myself, but I really wanted to try this out with these princesses. This stamp set is so adorable, by my favorite things, and I just wanted to make a card for you on this channel, not doing the same as I already did before. So that's why I decided to give this a go. I wouldn't do it really quickly afterwards again, but well, I like the end result. So here you can see that I smeared a bit of the, is it a nozzle? The nose of the unicorn. And I tried to get it away. I tried to continue with coloring and just leave it, and maybe I wouldn't see it afterwards, but yeah, you know that it's there. I know it. I cannot let it go. You know it because you're looking at this video. But I tried. I also tried to add a bit of white jelly roll pen, but where it's smeared, it was not close enough to the edge. So then a bit later I went over it again with a Copic marker. Well, it just wasn't turning out as I wanted it, but I just kept going, because you never know, maybe in the end. I also tried to add a bit of the white detail onto the legs to, well, make it not as strange that there is a bit of white detail, but that didn't help me either. So I just wanted to step away from the unicorn for a bit and started on the hair of this princess. For this lady I am using a gold combination, a gold or a blonde combination. I'm using E55, E53, E51, and if needed E50. And I'm just doing the same as with the other hair, first with the darkest, then mid-tone lightest, maybe even one lighter color, and I'm just creating that gradient, going over it a second time as well. And then, well, it was time to start on that unicorn again, which just didn't work out at all. So I already said it, but I colored this image again off camera, exactly the same color combination, same way of coloring, so that it wouldn't be a huge difference from what I'm showing here. So it's exactly the same, except I watched out for the nose, I don't know how you call it in English. So that's what I did. So I just went sort of around it. I don't know why it happened, because on the other images I didn't have any issues with the micron fine liner being there. But well, it happened, and then we need to figure out what we are going to do. So my solution was to start over. So I'm doing the final details on the unicorn in pinks, and I just love it. It's subtle, but it goes with the mint green that I use on the unicorn itself. And then afterwards, well, I had to decide to start over with coloring. So that's what happened, and then I took the matching dyes to cut everything out, and then I could start on the background. So as I said in the beginning, for the background I'm using the View from My Window Slimline die, and here you can see it die cut. Well, now we are going to trim it, because I want it to match on an A2 size card. This means that I'm trimming this panel down to 5.5 inch, and I'm making sure that I have 2 windows to use. This paper is, by the way, Strathmore Bristol Smooth 100 pounds. I am going to secure the windows in place before I start doing some ink blending, and then I'm going to take out some distress inks. Today I'm using Blueprint Sketch, Faded Jeans, Mermaid Lagoon, Peacock Feathers, and Cracked Pistachio, and I really like how it turned out. Now I must admit, on Strathmore Bristol Smooth, I have the impression that the colors are quite soft on there, so I'm ink blending with distress inks. I prefer them over distress oxide inks, although distress oxide inks are more forgiving in most cases than distress inks. Now, if you're new to ink blending, or you do prefer distress inks over oxide like I do, and you need to practice a bit more and stuff, Strathmore Bristol Smooth is one of the most forgiving papers that I know to do some ink blending with distress inks. Why? Because the ink sort of stays on there a bit longer, so you have more wiggle room, while if you're ink blending on Nina or Transotype perfect coloring paper, what I do often, it's less forgiving. So if you make mistakes there, you will probably keep seeing it right until the end, while on Strathmore Bristol Smooth you're quite safe. So that's something that I really recommend. I decided to use this paper because I wanted to have a whimsical background and doing some ink splatters as well as some water splatters. Now all the other papers where I ink blend on don't like water, and they don't react really well. So this paper, on the other hand, is way better for handling water. So when I want to splatter and I think about it ahead of time, I choose this paper to ink blend on. So I'm just going to splatter on some clear water droplets with my paintbrush, and then I will dab it off using a paper towel, and this will create these splatters. They appear white because the inks react onto water, and so you can lift them a bit from the panel if you want to. So now I'm adding a bit of those color splatters by just smooshing the inks onto my mini media mat from Waffle Flowers, and then I'm just adding a bit of water and taking my paintbrush to splatter it all around. Now, having these pretty princess images for this card, I wanted to add a bit more to this background. So I took the Starry Sky stencil by Fawn, and I decided to do a bit of pastes on top of it. So I'm using today the Nouveau Glimmer Paste Moonstone, and therefore I'm going to add this stencil on top of my panel. I am not adding it all the way down because I don't want any stars on my white sort of grounding that I had here. So I'm masking that off, and then I'm also making sure that this stencil is adhered well onto this small panel. So to add a bit of glimmer paste, I have this spatula, and I'm just scraping a bit out, and then I'm trying to evenly spread this glimmer paste all over this background. Once that's done, I'm just making sure that there is no excess, and if the glimmer paste didn't take on any of the color of the distress inks, then I can just put it back into the jar. And then I quickly washed off my stencil just by rinsing it immediately. You don't want it to sit on there, the glimmer paste, because it can dry and then it's really hard to get it off. So just go and rinse it immediately when you're done with adding your pastes. For the sentiments, I looked into my stamps and I just wanted to have a really fine script sentiment. So I took the Tons of Type by the Stamp Market, and I used the Sweet Feline by Mama Elephant because there are some small sentiment strips, but any sentiment strips you have on hand will do. And to be sure, I just made sure that I had 2 sentiments. One would at least work, and now I'm adding my princesses on top of this panel. So once they're on there, I'm going to add my sentiment strip, all with thin foam squares. I'm using my T-square ruler to help me get this foam strip straight on there. And once that's done, I can snip off the excess. And then I will continue with my card base. Now, as you can see, it's a bit smaller than an A2 size card, but I don't mind actually. I could have added it like this, but I decided that I wanted to use a bit of gold. Any excuse to use gold is a good excuse. So I added this panel already in the middle of my card base, and then I have these 2 slivers, tiny slivers of the Tonic Studios glitter card Gold Dust. I adore this paper, and I'm just going to add it right against my Slimline panel that I have trimmed down. And once these are on there, this card is completely finished. So I had a lot of fun using the Slimline die onto a regular A2 size card, and I hope that you do too. This really gives you another possibility to use this die over and over and really get a lot of cards out of it, and I just love it. This card could also have been a shaker card, but I just thought with all the glitter and stuff going on that it was going to be enough like this. But if you want to make shakers, it's an ideal Slimline die for that. So here are some more close-ups of this card. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can always give this one a thumbs up. I hope that you have an amazing day left, and I will be back soon with some new crafty inspiration. Bye!